Welcome to Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast with Colin McDougall and Richard Zokol. Well, welcome back, everybody. It's Colin McDougall here, Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast with my good friend Richard Zokol. How are you, Richard?
I'm good, Colin. I understand you're doing a little bit of traveling. You're down in Florida, are you?
Yes, that's right.
Still in Florida.
Glad to be down here and not in Toronto, which I'm heading back to tomorrow.
Yeah, no kidding.
So hopefully the snow is cleared and the flight is safe. Just finished the PGA Merchandise Show last week.
Yes.
Survived another one, and it was really, it was very nice to see lots of friends,
familiar faces,
and I was fortunate enough to be a guest speaker.
How did that go? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was good. So yeah, it was fun. It was a workshop on improvisational comedy and its business application to club services.
Nice.
So for those listeners out there who may not know, I used to be in the teaching game, and I took improvisational comedy training to be a more engaging speaker for my students. Mm-hmm. And that seemed to work really well. And then I studied about the business applications of it, and have found an avenue, sort of a side hustle, as my students would call it, giving talks now and then.
Well, I don't know much or don't know anything about improv comedy, but I have to think it's a lot like golf, because you are standing there absolutely exposed, and if you don't perform, you're going to be in a world of hurt, and it can get away on you, which is the mental side of performance. So I'd have to think that hitting golf shots in important situations is the exact same performance anxiety situation.
There's quite a few great business books on the applications of improv comedy. In that particular talk we gave, it was about sort of tying in the experience side of playing golf, the club experience, and sort of how empowering your employees through developing these skills would help with that. But you're absolutely right. When it comes, there are some really helpful elements that tie in improv to playing the game of golf. I would say one of the interesting things about improv, not to get too far off track, but is people think you have to be funny to be good at improvisational comedy, and that's far from the case. The output of improv is humor, but it's really skill-based. So if you learn the underlying skills, so the parallel I would draw would be, if you learn how to chip and putt really well, if you learn how to drive the ball really well, the outcome is a good score. And so it's the same sort of focus on skill development,
right?
And the output happens to be funny.
Interesting.
And so so it's really fascinating, and it was certainly a lot of fun. And the attendees, we got very, very good reviews. My colleague Dean is a really great speaker as well, and it was just a fun way to spend an hour with the current and future golf pros.
Cool.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's cool. So a wonderful week on the PGA Tour. I'm beginning to think, I think this Scotty Scheffler character might have some future promise in this game. What do you think?
Well, boy, oh boy, is he kind of setting the fox amongst the chickens here. So they're trying very much to avoid this comparison between Scotty Scheffler and Tiger Woods. Yeah. But the more Scotty Scheffler plays, the more he's being compared to Tiger Woods. I mean, he's going through the motions so brilliantly and remarkably and effortlessly. And he's doing it with such a low fuel burn rate. He's doing it so easily, and it's so remarkable. He's blowing these fields away. He's reached his 20th PGA Tour win, which is a massive milestone. I mean, he did it in 151 PGA Tour starts. Tiger got his 20th win in 95 PGA Tour starts. Scotty surpassed the $100 million mark this past week. So, he and then at the end of the round, he's being interviewed. He says, I just kind of did it. I kept it out of the water and kept it out of the trouble and managed my way out there. It was brilliant. The guy is brilliant.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are getting bored by it because it's not too exciting. He plays boring golf, but from my perspective, I love what he's doing, and I can't wait for him every week to watch him like we did Tiger.
I mean, 100 million. First of all, that is a lot of Chipotle that he can buy with that.
And he's doubling his revenue off the golf course. That's just the money he won on the golf course.
I'm pretty sure he can splurge and get the guacamole to go with the burrito now. But yes, I mean, it's. I think a lot of us thought, well, it can't possibly be that there would be a golfer of Tiger's caliber again in our lifetime.
Yeah.
It certainly seems that we're headed that way with what he's doing. And what's, in my mind, observing his play and sort of reflecting or aligning with what we saw at Tiger, I mean, there would be weeks where, especially early on, I think people would say, well, how was your game this week, Tiger? And he'd say, oh, it was kind of a B- or a C+. And he won. And you would say, I think there are times now where Scheffler clearly doesn't have all of it going, and he still wins.
Yeah.
And sometimes going, and so when he's fully on, the separation is really something to behold.
We're going to watch him, see how he does. Big expectations are going to be on him at the U.S. Open, because that's going to be his first opportunity to win the U.S. Open, to complete his career Grand Slam. The media is going to ask him about it. He's going to nonchalantly slough it off, and he's going to say, "Look, where I'm at right now is where I'm thinking." He's going to celebrate this victory a little bit, and then it's going to be rinse and repeat again in Phoenix. Yeah. He's not playing in San Diego at the Farmers Tournament Invitational this week. Brooks Koepka is. That's interesting. But Scotty's back home.
Sorry, who is?
Some guy named Koepka.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't he the guy?
Yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy that's coming back. So there's interesting.
He paid the $30 million entry fee. Was that what it was?
Yeah. He's paying some money, and Scotty's just finishing up on Scotty. This is where when I mean he has a small burn rate, and he's very conservative with his fuel, which is serving him well, which is all falling into his lap, or helping him be such a great player too. Is pretty exciting stuff. So he's rinse and repeat, and then he'll be out in Phoenix in a couple of weeks.
This week's PGA tournament, like others with Scotty, there is that sense of like, again. But in this case, in the spirit of trying to make something of this week, there was a young gentleman, Blades, there that was playing, and I couldn't help but think of he's 18 years old.
Yeah.
He's playing the final group with Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah.
And I thought we could maybe spend a little bit of time with this episode on that.
Sure.
Angle.
Good topic.
And I thought I was really, as I was reading and watching what was going on, I was very curious about your perspective as to how, I think a lot of us, we haven't experienced inside the ropes on the PGA Tour, what it's like. You have. And I was very interested to get your perspective on, what would the reaction be from the broader collection of PGA Tour players when someone of that youth and orientation walks out there and sort of establishes themselves? Like, how are they treated? What's the reaction? What would it be like?
Well,
in that,
yeah, there's first of all, when this Blades Brown. First of all, he's pretty cool stuff. His mother, I don't know if you knew this. Her name is Rhonda. Rhonda Blades Brown is her full name, and they call in their kid Blades Brown. It's pretty cool. She scored the first 3-point points in the women's NBA.
Oh, okay.
So pretty cool background. So she's a professional athlete.
Sure.
Played on the WNBA, and she in her first year, first game, she made the first 3-pointer in WNBA history. But it is very interesting with he's not the first. Blades Brown is not the first person to play well as a young kid on the PGA Tour. He's 18 years old. He's played in 10 PGA Tour events now. The interesting thing is that I saw that when he played in the Corn Ferry Tour last week, which ended on the Wednesday, he had a private jet waiting for him. And he flew, and it looked...
Who doesn't?
It was a Gulfstream jet, nonetheless. So, and I'm kind of going, oh my goodness, these young kids aren't even on the tour today. But he obviously got some help there, his agents and so forth, and he's probably being looked at by Liv as well. But when these young players like Scott Verplank was in college, he won the Western Open.
Right.
Phil Mickelson won the Tucson Open when he was in college. My roommate Bobby Clampett, he turned pro. He was in school for 3 years, turned pro, and when he was 19, which is only 6 months older than Blades Brown, he finished 19th on the money list without a win.
Right.
What we're going to find out is when this guy, and if this guy is able to, pull in some, close the door, close the deal, win at a young age, then he's going to make an enormous amount of money. Money's going to come at him like crazy. And only then are we going to find out what kind of chops this guy's got in his head. So we watched a Scotty Scheffler, what kind of chops he has. He's way more important, where he doesn't look at these material things. So it depends on the kid, and now there's a lot of naivety in these young kids when they come out on play. They got nothing to fear. They don't know what they don't know. And this is when you remember when Tiger was being interviewed by Curtis Strange in Milwaukee in his Hello World.
Yes.
And Curtis knows. Curtis is a tough guy. He knows what it takes. And he says to Tiger, "What do you expect to do?" And he goes, "Win." And he goes, "Well, that's pretty brash. You haven't even played one day of professional golf, and you're talking about winning." He says, "Yeah, well, that's the way I feel. And second place sucks, and third place is worse." So, and he gives it that we'll see. So you know what, with Blades Brown, we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. But you can't just give him the pass that he's going to do this all the time. We got to see how this kid's mind works and how mature he is and how fast he learns.
Yeah, in prep for the show today, I did try to pick up some of his media availability discussions. He's got expert level training on media relations. Like he is very personable.
He does look good, doesn't he? He does.
He does.
He interviews well.
He seems to be ready and prepared to say all the right things in all the right ways. And that is, I don't think, an accident. So it tells me he's got some, at least on that side of things, some people behind him that have prepared him well for
parents.
that.
He probably has good parents. That's what I would say.
Yeah, good parents, good upbringing, but and it seems genuine. Like he's just super pumped to play the final round with Scotty Scheffler. He was, mildly disappointed that it didn't turn out for him, but he learned a lot, and he just, and I would say, he just gave me a vibe of he kind of seems to have the whole package, where sometimes you would see players, and we can go down the list, and this and golf is not the unique in this regard, where you have occasionally players who are phenoms that are pushed towards the riches of the tour, and they fall and they falter, for any number of reasons. Usually it's sort of behind the scenes family. It's almost like the sport part is the easy. Playing well is the easy part. It's the managing life off the course, familial relations, people wanting a piece of you, friends wanting to hang on, all the distractions that you can get on in the evenings and so forth. And some are prepared to, some are mature at a younger age than others.
Right.
And, I think you're exactly right. There'll have to be a bit of a wait and see with Blades, but I do, at least my initial reaction is he seems to have the maturity level to really kind of handle what's coming for him if he keeps playing at this level.
Well, yeah, and the thing is too is what you have to admire the kid. He had a smile on him. And I wouldn't have. It's not surprising he was off a little bit. I mean, for gosh sakes, the guy plays 4 rounds on the Corn Ferry Tour, jumps on a plane and he lands. He's playing in Palm Springs without a practice round. He shoots 67, and the next round he's got a putt for 59 on the last hole.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he doesn't make it, and then he plays well on Saturday and birdies the last 3 holes to get into the final group with Scotty Scheffler. And this is where he's really going to learn. Is he
Hmm.
stumbled a little bit. He's probably got a little more excited than he was in the first few days. It was harder to settle down. But
Yeah.
watching a guy like Scotty, and he's going to look at him how Scotty played. He's going to go, well, that's not, that's nothing remarkable. In what he did is he managed himself. Whereas as a young kid, you're just kind of unsettled a little bit. And as calm as he was just unsettled a little bit. He shot 74, bogeyed the last couple of holes, type of thing. And
Right.
and it's unfortunate, but he's going to be hungry to get more. And we're going to have to watch him. A ton of money is going to have to go at this kid, a ton
Yeah.
of money. And it's if
Right.
I bet you Liv is talking to him right now and his parents and offering him a crazy, ridiculous amount. And
Yeah.
and if he doesn't go to, if he comes onto the PGA Tour and earns, he's going to have to earn his way. The thing is, I'd like to have seen him go to college at
Mhm.
least a year, make a decision after year one. Now
Right.
he said he's not going, and he has an answer to that. He says, "I race my own race." Well, I thought that was good. That's a good line. And
Yeah.
but the thing is, you just want to buy time, so maturity, especially on young boys. They
Mhm.
have a tendency to be, even though he's barking out the good words and the right words. We're gonna see what happens to this kid after a whole bunch of money's being thrown, piled upon him.
Yeah. Money, and I would say, it's early yet. How will he manage through adversity?
Yes,
When it inevitably comes, the game is so difficult. The players are so
that's right.
good. What happens when there's a stretch of
Missed cuts,
not meeting your own expectations of yourself,
or the media's expectations. It gets pulled
or the
in,
media's
and the
expectations?
microphone
Yeah.
goes. Why? Exactly, because adrenaline can only last so long. You can't stay high on adrenaline all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I still remember, Ty Tryon
Yes.
was thought to be the can't miss superstar.
Mm-hmm.
And as quickly as he shot up, he dissolved.
He hit the wall.
And not to be seen ever since.
He
Yeah.
hit the wall at 100 miles an hour. Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
So, fingers crossed that, first of all, that Blades Brown does succeed. I think that's good for the game. It's exciting. All those good things. And at minimum, he's got the familial support and the grounding to deal with the challenges that are going to inevitably come his way.
His biggest challenge right now is he's not old enough to rent a car.
not old enough to rent a car, and he can't legally have a beer for 3 more years. So he's going to celebrate and go out for a fresca? Like, what's going to happen here?
That's right. Exactly. But we'll have the chance to watch him, and he's fodder now. We get to see what he does. I can't wait. I'm attracted to watching to see how he's going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did want to circle back. So I asked about the tour reaction.
Yep.
There must have been, with Bobby Clampett, for example, as a comparable, how, you were close to Bobby, you lived with him in college. He too was a phenom in that era.
Unbelievable.
And I was curious, what was the reaction to your, from your perspective, to him joining the tour at a young age, succeeding so well, and then obviously struggling with his own expectations and with his own game.
Well, yeah, exactly. We've had a lot of discussions about that. He was remarkable. He came in, he played golf at Brigham Young with me. We were roommates at freshman year in the dorms. And, he was an All-American his freshman year. Sophomore year, won the Fred Haskins Award, won all the awards in his sophomore and junior year, and he decided to turn pro. And he was off like a shot and playing well and established, and like I said, finished 19th on the money list without a victory. That is some good golf for a 19-year-old. He was
That's
phenomenal.
staggering.
Then I think it was a couple years later, years later in Carnoustie, we had a 7-shot lead after 36 holes at the Open Championship,
Right.
and then all hell broke loose, and his swing collapsed. And I put together a theory and showed it to Bobby. He was so involved in The Golfing Machine. Do you remember that book written by Homer Kelly?
Yeah, sure.
24 components and this golf swing. And he got taught by this great teacher who taught The Golfing Machine called Ben Doyle down in Carmel. And I think what happened when his young mind started to, the young male mind, when it starts to mature at adulthood and learn all the logical side of it, when he started to actually understand the levers and pulleys and the physics and the geometry of the golfing machine, and he was so swing conscious, that's when the art of executing shots stopped. And from that point on, he dove into the mechanics even deeper and just went sideways because he was so swing conscious, specifically to the golfing machine. Then he left the golfing machine, and so he went down a deep rabbit hole with golf swing technique, and that's another avoidance that you have to have if you're going to play this game. You got to learn how to execute shots on the golf course and stop thinking about golf swing.
I think there's a lot of people who feel relating that idea to Tiger Woods, at the peak of his power, winning the U.S. Open by a million shots, and saying, you know what, I'm going to completely revamp my swing in pursuit of some sort of notion of a new level of perfection when it comes to that. And where most of us are like, if you had just stayed with that swing that you had, you would have beat Jack's record, no problem, and then some. And but it does, prey on the mind. That relentless pursuit of perceived perfection with that golf swing, I think can often lead you down a road where you stray away from the playing of the game instead focus on this notion of swing perfection.
Well, tournament golf and tournament golf is not about making good golf swings. It's about executing the right shot. And I'm of the opinion that you think when you're on the golf course, you think about executing shots, and then that might be a putter, a chip, or a drive, or a 5-iron. But when you want to work on your golf swing, and you should work on your golf swing, that's for the practice range and your coach. But you shouldn't be thinking golf swing or golf mechanics when you're executing shots on the golf course. And it becomes disruptive when you take that mindset. Now, there's so many people that believe the concept that if I improve my golf swing, therefore I'm going to be a good player or a better player. That's not true. That notion is not true. What you want to be is an excellent executioner of shots, assessing and executing shots on the golf course in difficult, stressful situations. That's what makes you a better player.
Today's episode of Tough Lives is brought to you by Fairway Foresight, the AI-powered digital caddy, yardage, and strategy app for golfers who want to stop making the same mistake every single round. Fairway Foresight doesn't just give you a number, it analyzes your patterns, your shot tendencies, their dispersion, and decision making. And then it shows you what you should do, not what you wish would happen. If you ever thought, I probably shouldn't hit driver here, and hey, who hasn't? But I'm going to hit driver anyways, this app is the one for you. So
Patrick Reed wins on the DP World Tour, Richard.
Yes, in Dubai.
Yeah. So is there a more sort of disliked tour player than Patrick Reed week in, week out?
Well, you could say he's talking about his pathway back to the PGA Tour right now, which I think is very interesting in his media. But, so there is a place for him. He's the bad guy. He is a good bad guy. He's an excellent bad guy. And he wants to get back, as it seems, that he wants to get back by the tour. So he was questioned after he won in the media press conference. He was asked, are you settled in with Livia? He said, no, not yet. We're still talking about this. And he mentioned that, he said, someone asked him, he said, "Do you have a path back to the PGA Tour?" He goes, "Yeah, I do." And they said, "How do you figure that?" He says, "Well, if I the DP World Tour every year, and he won this week on the DP World Tour, then he becomes, if he finishes in the top 10 of the DP World Tour are automatically exempt for the PGA Tour the following year." So you're going, "Oh, okay, didn't think of that one," but he's thinking of that one. So that's an interesting factor.
Yeah, I think it seems to be a theme, carrying over from last week, this week. I mean, my quick thought again is, if there's more, I don't think I think we'll get more evidence, but I think this is plenty of evidence that we are seeing the live experiment sort of conclude when players like this are literally trying to carve their own pathway back to the tour themselves, and have it sort of figured out as a game plan, and are architecting their way towards it.
Yes. So basically, when the light bulb went on over the journalist who asked Patrick Reed the question, he said, "Are you saying you're a free agent right now?" He goes, "Yes, sir, I am." So, right now, and I think he's leveraging his situation to negotiate for either more money from Liv, and but he's sniffed out a pathway that a lot of people possibly didn't think of. But that's what's on Patrick Reed's mind. It's an interesting one, and we'll see if the PGA Tour closes the door on him.
It's very interesting. I'm assuming he knows that to be true, and that's given the absolutely restrictive way that the PGA Tour has constructed the return program for the only 4 players they seem to truly want. It would be very interesting to see if other live players focus their energies on the Patrick Reed route, which could, in theory, wouldn't it reduce the actual toll in terms of cost that it would cost, in terms of getting themselves back to having a PGA Tour card. Like Brooks is paying his way.
Yeah, and also keep in mind he hit Brandel Chambly with that $800 million lawsuit. And the PGA Tour, I think he was one of the guys that was named on the lawsuit against the tour. So I'm not sure the PGA Tour wants him.
I agree.
And we'll see if they try and stop him.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're living in a world these days where it feels like, for lack of a better word, the rule of law is, questionable in terms of its enforceability in all kinds of other avenues. And, it seems like he's found, for lack of a better word, a loophole where he could conceivably go down this route, regain his PGA Tour status, and there's not much the tour could do. But I could also see, once the PGA Tour gets wind of this, they might just shut that down too, because they don't want him, So
they got another line item in the returning members program.
Yeah, exactly.
X out Patrick Reed. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's holy cat. Well, and I would say, if there are other people that the PGA Tour, let's call has deemed them undesirable, aka Phil Mickelson. Could you see Phil Mickelson playing on the DP World Tour to try to come top 10 and make his way back? Well, I mean, I don't know that he would do it, but
we'll have to see you'll have to see if that's a pathway that they can jump on in. But they're still going to have to perform, and got to make the top 10 on the DP World Tour, European.
Tour, right? Remarkable. Wow. Okay, well, let's move on, and I do you want to spend some time on the mental side, as we always do with this episode? And I was curious, from this week, what do we want to bring? What do we want to talk about when it comes to the mental side of golf, Richard?
Well, keeping your cool, and we watch Scotty Scheffler do such a good job of it all the time, and because we're finished at the PGA West on the weekend, I do want to tell the story of me being back at the PGA Tour qualifying school once again. It happened to be on the finals on PGA West, and my experience of that. So it's 6 rounds of torturous golf, and there's 4 rounds on PGA West. and this is in 1986. And I play the first 4 rounds. I'm comfortably in the top 12, and I'm not playing really well, but I'm managing myself extremely well. But then on the 5th round, I'm leaking oil, and then on the 6th round, I remember coming around that back 9, and I knew if I didn't play well, I was going to be right on the bubble coming down. On the 15th hole, I shook it in for par. 16th, the par 5. I barely made par, and I remember standing on Alcatraz, the 17th hole, and it's this island green. And when you've already, if you're in the qualifying school, you've played poorly for the past year, and it's culminating to this build up and this sadistic golf course that Pete Dye built with Alcatraz. And I remember standing there, and all you're trying to do is hit the green. And if you make one bad swing, you're in trouble. You can hit more balls into the water. And I hit the middle of the green, and I was delighted. I remember coming off that shot on 18, and I made reference to Pete Dye. And he's a sadistic guy as he built his golf course. And I literally talked under my breath. I said, "Fuck you, Pete Dye." And I got and I made a bad putt. And I'll never forget, I had a 4-foot putt for par. And it wiggled in the hole, and it could have just as easily wiggled out, just as easy. And then on the 18th, I'm choking my guts out, Colin, coming down the 18th hole. And I know I can't afford to make one mistake. Hit 3-wood off the tee, and I'm just in torture. And I'm going, and the talk I'm having to myself is just awful. I'm in full-blown golf insanity, and I'm, in total fear. And I'm going, if this is what golf is, I don't want any part of it. I was getting really pissed off with myself, coming down, going up to my second shot on the 18th hole. And I said, if I don't want this, there's this pressure and this anxiety, and it's just an awful situation. And then I finally got to my second shot, and 160 yards, and typically the pin was exactly where it was on the final round, tucked in right beside the water, back left. And the play is to the middle of the green, with something shorter, at 100, and I was going to hit a 6-iron to the middle of the green and play it safe. And what would probably do is you leak it out to the right. Remember where Scotty leaked it out to the right? And then if you're got that mindset, you're not going to get it up and down. You're going to miss. And I'm dog cussing myself for even thinking this way in the first place, and just have all this fear. And I said, I got to stop this golf insanity. And I was getting more mad and more mad, and then I just said, to hell with it. I don't care. I do not care. And I said, I put the 6-iron back in the bag, and I pulled the 5-iron out, and I said, I'm going right at the pin. And I don't care if the ball goes in the hole or in the water. I just needed to break this insanity, and I had to prove it to myself right here. You can't prove it to yourself on the driving range. You prove it to yourself in the heat of battle, and there's nothing more important than the heat of battle right then, right there. And I knew if I succumbed to the situation, I was going to hit a bad shot, because I was being overwhelmed with these bad thoughts. And I just said, to hell with it. I don't care if it goes in the water. I go through my routine, hit this shot, and I look up at the ball, and the ball's going right at the pin. It was the best shot I hit all day, and it ends up about 5 feet from the hole. And I miss the putt, tap it in, go to the scoreboard. My caddy goes, "Are we going to the scoreboard, boss?" And we went, "No, we're going home." I get my wife, Joni. We go back to, I said, "Call me later." And at that moment, Colin, I didn't care. I had freedom. I didn't care if I made it or missed it. I broke through the wall. And then, and I remember I'm sleeping, and I'm just exhausted from the whole week. And the phone rings. My caddy says to me, "We made it." And I picked up the phone. I said, "I still don't effing care." And I hung up the phone. I went back to sleep. And I just said, this is insane. I have to do something about this. So on that second shot, I broke through the wall. I became comfortably numb. I go into great detail about it in the book. So if you don't have a mechanism, something to cause you to explode, to break the wall get through it, you have to have you have to know that you can do it when you're in that type of pressure. And then, there's a number of ways to do it. The tough way is to break through the wall and explode not have, just to let it go. But it takes enough golf insanity to do that. So, So that's where I led to learning how to creating the system to get you in the present moment, so you don't get into that position in the first place.
I love that. I love that story. There's so much in there. I couldn't, as I'm hearing, it's like, 5-iron. For those listening, I just want to be clear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you hit it plenty far. I think people these days would say 5-iron. Well, that's like a 7-iron. But the reality is the golf equipment companies all have changed the lofts on the iron, so it's a 6-iron, a 5's now a 6,
Yep.
and all that. So, but for me, I love that. Well, let me ask it this way: was it the exhaustion of the endeavor that caused that sort of breakthrough? Like, is it, or is there a way that the average golfer can kind of get themselves to that point without necessarily having to go through the agony that you went through?
Well, most people, I don't think, go through the agony. I've had a couple of those moments where I've slipped back into having golf insanity, and I'll tell you those other stories down the road. But what it learned is that I was able to get my freedom back when you let go, and and a lot of people say, and in that moment I said, I don't effing care. You actually care, but what you have to do is learn to detach emotionally from the result. That's what you got to. So of course we care. We all care, but you got to dig down, and you've got to understand that if you have this emotional attachment to the result, this extrinsic, I use that word, extrinsic results. It might mean qualifying and what it'll mean to your family and all that stuff. Those are the reasons that really get you in trouble. So if you want freedom, like the freedom that Scotty Scheffler is automatically has, I didn't have that. I like most people, started to get my ego attached to the results, and I didn't like the fact that as a PGA Tour player, I had to go back to the qualifying school. It affected my personal identity, that I wasn't good enough for the PGA Tour. Yeah. Those things that keep you emotionally incarcerated, and you just, this cycle of golf insanity goes around and around and around, and it pulls you down until something breaks. Yes. And that's when you go, hey, wait a minute, because when you break through, you're free, you let go, and you can play well.
Oh my goodness, there's so much in there that rings true from my lived experience. Obviously not at your level, but
it's all relative.
That ability, true that. And for me, when I've played my best, it's almost like it sounds funny, but there's a degree of forgetfulness, if that makes sense. Like where I'm so detached, and I'm literally just playing the shot at hand, and I don't think ahead.
Well, you're in the present moment.
I'm in the present moment.
In the present moment, you let go. What happened behind you doesn't matter. That's what happened.
That's the zone. Yeah, what happened behind me, and what's ahead of me doesn't worry me because I'm not thinking about it.
That's right.
And then at some point, of course, like a lot of us, you get to a point where you pause and go, oh, wait a minute, I just played those last X number of holes really well.
Exactly. So what happens often? What happens often to the player when they're playing really bad and then they give up? What happens? They let go. And then all of a sudden they let go, and then they next thing you know, they're playing great, and then they start to care again or get emotionally attached to the result, and they get ahead of themselves, and then they collapse again. So this is vicious cycle that I talk about.
So true. Oh, I love that story. So and that is characterized in your book, correct?
Absolutely, and I go into into and I say once I lost that, and because there's music and rock and roll, I became comfortably numb. I didn't care, and I didn't do it with a needle prick like the song "Comfortably Numb" from Pink Floyd. That's exactly where it comes from. But every time, you know what? Every time I hear that music, like that song "Comfortably," I cry. I cry. It takes me back to that situation.
Oh, wait. Okay.
It just has an emotional effect on me. Every time I hear that music, that song by Pink Floyd, Comfortably Numb, I tear up. It has such an emotional effect. Yep.
Oh, that's fascinating. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. That's really helpful. I think that those of us who love the game and will be heartened to know that that there's that sort of degree of connectivity and have certain a song can really bring those memories back in such a positive, meaningful, deep way. That's great.
Well, I established listening to that Pink Floyd and Comfortably Numb when I was doing the Disco Dick thing. I listened to that music, and then you start to. I loved it. It's so much fun, and then the next issue when we talk about this experience, the lowest round I ever shot in the PGA Tour started out with the yips, and then I lost it, and then I went and played well thereafter. But that's another story.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have a lot of fun unpacking all these stories. Now, so we'd like to wrap up sort of with the key takeaways from this week, and I'm curious sort of where you think, what should we take away from this week's discussion, and maybe anything about the look ahead on the tour and
sure
what's going on.
Well, yeah, I'll jump ahead and like I'm interested. I want to see Brooks Koepka. He's picked a tough golf course to come play. Torrey Pines is a difficult golf course, so there's expectations on Brooks Koepka to play well in San Diego, and if he doesn't, the media will be on him because he's bringing this new equity to the PGA Tour, right? There's value in that.
He's bringing his equity, and he's not gaining any equity at the same time, right? So
exactly.
It's going to be interesting. He's going to be doing a presser tomorrow, I think, right?
Yes.
So it'll be very interesting to see what he has to say that he's sort of rejoining the tour and so forth. I think it's. I mentioned this last week. It's just going to be a fascinating year this year for so many reasons. But and we're already there with one of the key. We have the best player in the world, Scheffler, winning this week, and then we have Brooks Koepka returning. And it's just I think there's going to be encore after encore.
The topics are good.
And obviously. Blades Brown really setting it on fire this week, and for me, I appreciate your insights about what young Blades is going to be going through. I think we both, it seems like, wish that it really works out for him. We're not interested in seeing any sort of a train wreck.
No.
And it's going to be fraught with challenges. So I'm really excited to see what is on the horizon for that young man.
Yeah, it's gonna be fascinating. Yeah,
I agree. Well, with that, we're gonna conclude this week's episode.
Okay, my friend.
I want to say a big thank you to JP Free Agent, our producer extraordinaire. I want to say thanks again to Lost in Japan for the music, and I look forward to seeing everybody hitting the fairways this week. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Join us next week on the Golfers Podcast with Richard Zokol and Colin McDougall.